Mounting pressure from John McCain to Apple, even concern from Super Bowl organizers. A growing chorus calling on Arizona's governor to veto a bill that would let businesses turn away gay customers. Is her decision near?
Well, that was the top story in the country today. Republicans under fire in the great state of Arizona for passing a bill that would allow businesses to refuse to serve gay people as customers. Republicans under fire in that state for that bill, even from some other Republicans. 10 years ago, there was not Republican on Republican fighting on this issue. 10 years ago, this was a straight-up winning, unifying issue for Republicans. They were not only united, they had popular support for their anti-gay positions. They were happy to take these positions publicly and to be known for them anywhere in the country. 10 years later, though, it is now an open and really interesting political question as to whether those sorts of positions represent both the past and the future of the Republican Party, or whether that stuff is just the past. The question is whether Republicans will continue to be how they have been on these issues, or are they going to leave that history behind? Are they now going to change? Open question, really interesting question. And today in the news, that really interesting open question became very specific because we are now officially on veto watch in Arizona, as Arizona's Republican Governor Jan Brewer decides whether to sign or veto a bill that was just passed by the Republicans in the state legislature in Arizona. It's a bill that would allow discrimination. Stores could refuse to do business with customers who they believed to be gay. Restaurants could refuse to serve you a meal if you're gay, or if they think you're gay. Hotels could refuse to rent you a room if the hotel owner or even the hotel clerk said something about doing business with you violated their religious beliefs. Any Arizona business could put up a sign in their window that said, "We serve straight people only." Well, on that bill, Governor Brewer has until Saturday to make a decision. NBC reported earlier today that sources close to the governor say she's likely to veto the bill. But likely is no sure thing. And while we're on veto watch in Arizona, it turns out this is not just happening only in Arizona. It's happening other places, too.
The Arizona bill is on Governor Jan Brewer's desk, awaiting her decision on signing it or vetoing it. Now, a similar bill is under consideration in the Georgia Capitol.
It's called the Preservation of Religious Freedom Act. This afternoon, hearings in both the House and the Senate Judiciary Committees were held to debate House Bill 1023.
House Bill 1023 would allow individuals, businesses, and government employees to deny services based on religious grounds.
So that's Georgia. Opposite side of the country, same thing going on. Georgia Republicans in both the Georgia House and the Georgia Senate have introduced bills like the one in Arizona, almost identical, which would allow businesses to discriminate if they said they wanted to do so because of their religious beliefs. Both of those Georgia bills were debated in committee yesterday afternoon. The Senate bill in Georgia could reach the floor for a vote as early as tomorrow. And it's not even just Arizona and Georgia. Turns out these bills are like the trendy new right-wing bill all around the country. In Missouri, a Republican state senator just yesterday introduced a bill that would allow Missouri businesses claiming a religious objection to refuse to serve customers on that basis. In Ohio, a bill like this has also been introduced there in the House. In Nevada, a bill like this is making its way through committee. Same story in Idaho, where a Republican bill has just been moved back to committee. Republicans in Oklahoma have proposed a bill like this. Republicans in Hawaii have proposed a bill like this. Republicans in Mississippi have already passed a bill like this through the state Senate, and it's now on the way to the Mississippi House. Republicans in Utah are trying to pass this measure as an amendment. Republicans in Oregon are trying to get it onto the ballot. Republicans are trying to pass legislation like this everywhere in the country and at lightning speed. So far, at least, though, it has not yet worked. It's interesting. For a while, it sort of seemed like these bills were going to pass everywhere, kind of under the radar. But in all of the places where these bills have gone far enough to seem like they might become law, and all of the places where that's happened and they've attracted national attention, they have then gone away. It's like sunlight makes them fizzle up and die. Earlier this month, Kansas Republicans passed one of these bills by an overwhelming margin in the House. But then when it moved onto the state Senate in Kansas, and a whole bunch of national headlines followed about what Kansas was about to do, the bill in Kansas was quickly killed before it even came to a vote in the Senate. A few days later, the eyes of the nation descended upon the state of Tennessee, which was also taking up a bill like this. It looked like it had a good chance of passage. It started to get national attention, and then the bill was abruptly delayed for a year by Republicans in the state Senate. The place it has gone the furthest thus far is Arizona, which is why right now all eyes are on Arizona to see if the Republican bill there is going to pass or if it's going to meet the same fate as Kansas and all the rest. Republicans were really sure of themselves on this issue for a really long time. They knew campaigning against the threat of gay people having equal rights was great politics for them. Sunlight made them grow. They wanted to be known for that in these issues. When they got national attention to their anti-gay fights, they felt like it made them stronger, not weaker on this issue. Being anti-gay used to unite Republican politicians. It worked for them. It was such a reliable vote getter, they used to put it on the ballot because they thought it would have coattails, even in national elections. They used to know how well anti-gay politics worked for them all around the country. Now, today, two questions. Do Republicans still think this can work for them the way it used to? And also, where did all these nearly identical discrimination bills come from all over the country all at once? Joining us now is Dana Liebelson. She's a reporter with Mother Jones Magazine. She's been doing some great work covering these so-called religious freedom bills in Arizona and in Georgia and around the country. Ms. Liebelson, thanks very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So you've been reporting on these bills that have been popping up all across the country. Are you able to tell where these are all coming from, or is everybody just having the same idea all at once?
You know, it's funny. A lot of the different lawmakers are pointing to other lawmakers, saying, hey, I got the idea from Ohio. I got the idea from Tennessee. But if you dig into this a little bit more, I think you find that there's a lot of actually national conservative groups who are kind of working, pushing this legislation, in some cases even writing the legislation. And although we haven't found sort of one group that's behind all of these bills, I think there's definitely a correlation.
It seemed, just watching this from a national perspective, it seemed to me like Kansas was the place that was most likely to pass it. There's been kind of a purge in Kansas legislature where they got rid of a lot of Republicans who weren't on the conservative side of the Republican Party. Obviously, Sam Brownback has been a crusading anti-gay Republican politician for all of his time in public life. I thought Kansas would do it. Kansas balked and decided not to. Arizona's very close. Can you tell how close they are in Georgia? Are they likely to move it as far as Arizona has?
Sure. Well, I think with the Arizona bill, at first people didn't really realize what the Arizona bill did because it doesn't specifically say anything about same-sex couples the way the Kansas bill does. However, as people sort of look more into the language of the bill in Arizona, they realized that it could be used to sort of justify any kind of discrimination. So once we saw what happened with Arizona, I think when the Georgia bill came around, it got national attention much quicker. And, you know, last I heard, one of the representatives who introduced that bill in Kansas was, in Georgia was thinking of offering amendments to it to make it less discriminatory.
In terms of the overall idea of like the title of these bills and the ways they're being marketed, a lot of states have bills explicitly protecting religious freedom on the books, above and beyond, of course, the federal constitutional protections for religious freedom that we all enjoy. The idea of doing this through state legislation isn't a brand new legal concept. What is it about these laws that is novel? What is different about these new measures?
Right, so people who defend these bills say, hey, there's nothing new to see here. These are the same old Religious Freedom Restoration Acts we've always had. But in fact, you know, the bills that we've seen proposed in the last couple months have this very distinct provision where they allow people, and in some cases, like the case in Arizona, businesses, to use religion as a defense in a private lawsuit. So to give you an example of how that might play out, you know, let's say you live in a state where it's illegal to fire someone because they're gay. Now, if one of these bills passes, that company could turn around and say, oh, hey, I think homosexuality is a sin. Therefore, you know, I'm going to fire you and I don't need to abide by this law. So, you know, that lawsuit provision is a big deal.
And I know in some of these cases, in some of the states where they've been considering this, the lawsuit provision works in such a way that not only can you not sue somebody for discriminating against you, but if you do, you have to pay their legal fees as well as your own. So it's almost a punishment for even complaining about being discriminated against. It's fascinating stuff and a fast-moving story. Dana Liebelson, reporter for Mother Jones, thanks very much for being here tonight. It's nice to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks.